My name is Dr. Ian Storch. I'm a board-certified gastroenterologist and osteopathic physician, and you are listening to D.O or Do Not. If you are interested in joining our team or have suggestions or comments, please contact us at doordonotpodcast.com. Share our link with your friends and like us on Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope you enjoy this episode.
My name is Aaron Plummer. I'm a pre-med student at the University of Central Florida, and you're listening to the D.O or Do Not podcast. Today, we're excited to share our conversation with Dr. Shandra Basil, a dedicated family medicine physician who has embraced the direct primary care or DPC model. Dr. Basil founded Basil Family Medicine Clinic right after completing her residency and has since expanded to 4 clinics across Ohio. For those not familiar with DPC, it is an innovative alternative payment model improving access to high-functioning healthcare with a simple, flat, affordable membership fee. In our interview, she delves into the principles of the DPC model and how it differs from concierge medicine. She shares her motivations behind starting her practice so early in her career and the unique challenges she faced. Dr. Basil further sheds light on the broader challenges primary care physicians encounter in the healthcare landscape. Dr. Basil will share her journey into medicine, which was profoundly influenced by a DO mentor she had before embarking on a medical mission, and how this mentorship inspired her to pursue osteopathic medicine. Dr. Basil will discuss her role as an assistant clinical professor at the Ohio University Heritage College of Osteopathic Medicine, where she teaches osteopathic manipulative medicine, or OMM for short. She will describe how she plans to begin teaching at the Ohio University Heritage College of Osteopathic Medicine Dublin campus in the fall, making a full circle moment after starting her medical education there 10 years ago. Dr. Basil shares her personal challenges at passing the COMLEX Level 2 while having 2 young children and her difficulties of overcoming these deficiencies to ultimately match into family medicine. We know you will love this episode.
Hello, my name is Suzanne Chaar, and I'm a third-year medical student at Ohio University Heritage College of Osteopathic Medicine, and I have the pleasure today of interviewing Dr. Shandra Basil. Dr. Basil, welcome to the Do or Do Not podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing great. So excited to be here.
We're really excited to have you here today to learn all about direct primary care. Can you start us off with explaining what is direct primary care model to our listeners?
I would love to. So direct primary care is a continually growing model of practice that we're seeing not just in the family medicine primary care space, but hopefully continuing to grow even in some of our specialists, which is super exciting. But just kind of a brief description, there is actually a technical definition of what is a direct primary care practice. So that is a practice that charges a periodic fee. They also do not bill third parties. So this would be like a pure DPC practice. So they're not billing insurance or charging fee for service fees. And then they also do not have per visit fees that exceed that periodic fee. So most DPC practices charge a monthly membership, which is that periodic fee. And then some practices will charge like a per visit fee, but most do not. Most do not have limits on the number of visits that a patient can have. It's a way for us to kind of help patients spread the cost of their healthcare over the year, but still get excellent access to care. And the focus is really affordability of care, getting access to care, not waiting weeks and months to get in to be seen. Also having the time to develop those true physician-patient relationships and not having rush visits. And then price transparency is actually a huge part of it. We know healthcare can be super expensive. So in the direct primary care model, we really focus on getting our patients affordable healthcare. And that comes in a lot of different ways that we get to do that. But then one of the most important things probably to our listeners is the physician autonomy. So having the ability as the physician to do the right thing that we feel our patients need and not feel that we're being kind of overshadowed or controlled by the insurance companies or the hospital systems, that sort of thing.
What is the difference between direct primary care and concierge medicine, if there's any difference?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked. This is a common question that I get and that a lot of DPC docs sometimes get heated about, because concierge is actually very different. We share some characteristics in that we have a periodic fee and we have a small panel of patients, but outside of that, they're very different. Concierge practice, by definition, they do the periodic fee, but they also bill insurance companies or third parties, and they oftentimes will also charge those per visit fees. So there's a lot of cost that typically comes with a concierge practice. And so when I think originally when people think about it, they think about celebrities and having their like own private doctor. And that is kind of, what is concierge medicine. There are some practices out there that maybe call themselves concierge that might be more DPC than concierge. And there are definitely hybrids of these models of care out there. But truly the difference is from a billing standpoint. They're charging a periodic fee, they're charging the insurance, they're charging co-pays per visit. So there's a lot more cost and there's a lot less price transparency in those models of practice.
Very interesting. So in direct primary care, what happens if a patient needs to see a specialist or if they need to go to the emergency department? Do they still have a private insurance, or how do patients navigate these situations?
Yeah, great question. So in my panel of patients, I have kind of a full spectrum of patients, those who are uninsured and have nothing, and then patients who have kind of that like Cadillac insurance plan. And so their reasons for seeing me in this model really vary. But when it comes to getting them the care that they need, of course, for my patients who have no insurance at all, we really help to kind of make good choices about where we send them for those services. Obviously, if they need an emergency department, I'm going to recommend that they go there, but we try and help educate them on how to make sure they're getting the best cost for their care. So making sure that they're working with the social workers or the billing department to get any of those fee schedules reduced so that their bills aren't extreme, because a lot of patients don't know how to navigate that and they end up with bills that they really shouldn't be paying and that should be covered. And so we love helping those patients navigate that situation. And then for my patients that are insured, whether they have a high deductible plan or the really Cadillac insurance plans, we can refer them and send them just like any traditional office would. So I send a specialist just like any other doc, probably less than most traditional family docs because I do have a lot more time in the office with my patients, but still send those referrals the same when they need imaging or things like that. Depending on the kind of insurance that they have, we do help them navigate. Is it better for them to go to a cash-based imaging center and get the MRI? Or should we send them, to the health system and do it that way? For timing and convenience, we usually try to use those freestanding centers, even if they do have insurance. They can still bill insurance for our patients, but they tend to have much better scheduling. So our patients get in quicker and we get things done and it's sent to us in a more timely manner. But sometimes we end up at major health systems for different services, and that's fine too. It just requires some extra work on our part.
Got it. That makes sense. So a lot of osteopathic physicians often say it is really difficult to do OMM or OMT in this in typically conversion payment model, as it takes a lot of time. What is your thoughts on this? And was this part of what drew you to direct primary care, to have more time to do OMM?
So I would say one of the big draws for me was time, kind of in general, time to get to know my patients, time to understand what they need. And then OMM just perfectly fits into that. Now you can do OMM quickly in a traditional setting, and I have plenty of friends that do that in their practice in a traditional office. It's just not as easy to fit patients in and get them, regular OMM care. If you feel like you need to see them weekly for the next month, that's really hard to do if your schedule's pretty full. So DPC gives me the flexibility of my schedule to be able to see patients at the pace we feel like they need to be seen, and also gives me the time to spend with them. So most of my OMM visits, we schedule those in either 30 or 60-minute blocks. And that gives me, plenty of time to do full assessments on those patients and chat with them and kind of, understand not just what their body's doing, but environmentally what's going on, doing more of the observation things that we may not get to do in a traditional setting because of time. So it was part of it, but not all of it.
Got it. Okay. Did you start your own practice straight out of residency, or did you work in a hospital or a clinic before doing direct primary care?
So I knew when I went into residency that I wanted to practice direct primary care. So there was a lot of planning that kind of went into that for me. And at the time of graduating residency, there weren't a lot of residents doing it right out, but there were some. I had actually, my mentor was like, I don't think this is going to work. And I was like, yes, it is. And I will say, for all of the med students and residents out there maybe thinking about this, I would argue that doing our residency is the best time to do it because you're not making a ton of money yet. I think it's much harder for physicians that are transitioning from a traditional salary into DPC because it takes time to grow. So as a resident, like, you're not making much. So you don't have a lot to make up for yet. And I did work urgent care like almost the first year that I was in practice. So while I was building my clinic panel, I was working part-time in the urgent care because I started with 0 patients. So it wasn't like my days were full of patients yet. So I was working like 3 or 4 days a week at the urgent care, which helped me to do a lot of procedural things and keep fresh on my skills. But at the same time, I had time to do recruitment things and grow my panel.
So it seems like it took you a while to actually build up that practice. What steps did you take to build it up while working in urgent care? And if you had any initial obstacles, how did you overcome these obstacles?
Yeah, as far as the growth piece, so most people in DPC, and you'll get a lot of opinions on this, say like healthy growth of a panel would be about 100 patients per year, or maybe like 15 to 20 patients a month, but you'll have some kind of turnover in there. So there is a little bit of churn. And I'm just over my 3-year mark. So I opened in July of 21. So we just celebrated 3 years at Basil Family Medicine, and we're like right about that 300 mark. So we've been pretty right on par with what a lot of TPC docs told me when I started. So that's exciting. And most of it truly is word of mouth. I actually opened the practice first at my house, where I live. And really, I didn't do my residency training here. Now, I did go to OU Dublin in Columbus, and I live in South Columbus, but still, it wasn't like I was like seeing patients as a med student that were my own. So my own patients were in Chillicothe, and that's not where I opened my practice. So I was really nervous about that at first. But surprisingly, my Columbus location has been the one that's grown the fastest. And I think it was visibility of having a sign in my yard. So people were driving down the road and like, oh, what is that? That's like a farmhouse. How's their doctor's office there? And that really intrigues a lot of people, which I think is kind of fun. It really is kind of like getting back to our roots in medicine, having a home-based practice. And we actually, when I first started, my husband and I and my kids, there's a large like neighborhood close to my house, and we took door hangers and walked around for like a whole week, like talking to people and hanging up door hangers, which was crazy now thinking about it. But like my kids are like bouncing around hanging stuff on people's door, which was fun and exhausting. And honestly, I don't know how many patients really came from that. It's really just like people just kind of started finding us. And once you get those few patients that just like to tell everybody, that's where things really kind of picked up. Those patients continue to tell everyone they meet and know about us, which I'm so grateful for. And that's really how the growth has come. And I prefer it that way, that it's people that believe in what we do and think we do a great job, and they're sending more people our way.
So you started your first practice from your house, but now you have 4 different offices. Are you the only physician, or is there other physicians with you? How do you do with staffing these offices? Like, what is the process behind it?
Yeah, everyone thinks I'm crazy. That is not the traditional way of DPC. My husband is my business mind. I'm business savvy-ish, but he's always thinking next steps, and I'm like, I just need to breathe. But the more we looked at things, we realized that if we could expand geographically where we were, then we could obviously pull in more patients. And we have rental properties. So he does the rental property thing. And so we started looking for properties that had space that I could use as a clinic, but also space that could be used as apartments or whatever. So that really covers a lot of my overhead, because most people are like, how can you afford to have that many spaces? Well, it's because we own the building, and the people that live upstairs pay for my space. So that really cuts down on my overhead. So from a financial standpoint, it really works well. Logistically, I don't mind being on the road. I've always kind of like had some sort of commute, and all of our offices are within less than an hour of each other. Athens was kind of the farthest one, but it's like right at an hour. And I kind of like the commute. It's like my decompression time to really like let the day go and think about, what needs to be done next, and just kind of listen to a podcast or, whatever. So that's my podcast time, audiobooks, that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm the only physician. I do have a nurse practitioner, although she's actually transitioning to a new job doing more hormone-based therapies. But she was primarily seeing patients at our Johnstown location, and then I was at the other 3 offices. So we are currently transitioning some things as she's leaving. But my goal is to grow it. I want to bring other physicians on. I'm really passionate about this model of care, and I really believe that it's a really ideal way for us to take care of our patients. So I hope to bring other docs into that and really grow it and spread it. So hopefully I'm not driving to all these places forever.
Makes sense, yeah. Is there an office that was the most difficult to open, or was it about the same across like all 4 locations?
Oh, I'd have to say, because the work that went into them, and actually probably our Chillicothe location, like the manual work. You may see some videos circulating out there on my social media of me like putting up wallpaper and sanding floors, and like we totally renovated that space, which makes it super special because like so much work has gone into creating these spaces. And the same at my house, although it was kind of a little bit of a fresh build because we had a space that just needed reconstructed. But the Chillicothe office was like an old historical home, and we had to turn the downstairs into my clinic. So there was a lot of manual labor in that one. So the manual labor part was the hardest. But as far as, the function of the clinic, we were able, like at that point, I had kind of like done a lot of research, knew what I needed going into it. So a lot of that was kind of copy and paste for each location. But I did have a lot of research to do up front, just from like a medical legal standpoint, and like what kind of supplies I needed to start, and medications on hand, and all of that. I kind of came prepared before any of the offices opened.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it is often stated that a lot of people don't like to go to primary care because of the reimbursement and the payment and all of that fun stuff. Do you think that this model of direct primary care makes it more appealing to medical students or residents to go into family med or just primary care in general?
I think it definitely should. And I'd say another like big turnoff for a lot of people in primary care is the moral injury, or like burnout. The moral injury, I think, is the more accepted term now that we see in primary care, because of just the volume of patients that are expected to be seen, and the lack of time with family, and having to spend all your time documenting even after you leave the office. So like DPC fixes a lot of that. Not to say that that stuff becomes just like easy, like you still have to document, but not like you do in a traditional office. And I have a lot more flexibility in my schedule. So that was probably the biggest driver for me outside of the medical reasons to do DPC was the flexibility and time I get to spend with my family. When I want to go on vacation, like guess what? I'm the boss, so I can go on vacation. And we've realized like I need a getaway about every 3 months, whether it's just like a short weekend or whatever.
Mhm.
But like that keeps me fresh and good for my patients. And so I'm able to do that because I control the schedule. Nobody's telling me that I only get 20 days of PTO for the whole year, which is crazy. But
Yeah.
that's what most traditional practices say. And like, then you're expected to take it home and get it done and send all the messages. And so I literally do take it home because it's here at my house. But I separate those things, and boundaries are probably the most important thing, not just in DPC, but as a physician, just across the board, setting healthy boundaries. And I don't like to compartmentalize my life. Like I'm not doctor in this part of my life and then mom. Like it's my kids are part of my work life situation. Like they
Mhm.
come in the office and see me with patients and they get home from school and my patients say hello. Like it's all part of my life and I want it that way. And I think sometimes in medicine, like we're discouraged of that to just like separate it all. And you do need those healthy boundaries, but I think like doing a job that you love, that you're okay with it all blending together, because ultimately like we can't just separate ourselves into these different people.
Yeah, that makes sense. Speaking of flexibility, what does a normal workday looks like? I'm assuming every day might be a little bit different, but for example, if you had a clinic yesterday, what type of patients did you see? Just can you take us through your day, morning to afternoon type of thing?
Yeah, for sure. So yesterday was a Monday. So Mondays are always fun, even in DPC. Thankfully, my patients really don't like, for people that don't know DPC, like I'm technically kind of on call for my patients, but they know they can get in touch with me. So most of them like will wait till office hours to reach out. They're not driving me crazy all weekend about things that aren't urgent. So come Monday morning, still get kind of that Monday morning rush, but I have chose, because I'm not a morning person, to start clinic at 9. And when I'm working at the Columbus office, I don't have far to go. So I'm one of those people that just kind of like rolls out of bed, puts my clothes on, and I walk into the office. So I don't get up and do a whole lot of prep. I get every minute of sleep I possibly can. And then come into the office. And a busy day in the office on average, lately anyways, is probably like 6 to 8 patients. And that maybe is a little heavy for what you'll hear from most people based on my panel size. So I'm working on that. But that's a busy day for me. And in a traditional clinic, 20 to 30 patients is kind of the expected. Yesterday, I think I had maybe 5 or 6 on the schedule. I actually went to 2 different offices yesterday. So I spent the morning at my Columbus office, and I had a new patient that we established. And I think a follow-up appointment after that. Those visits both were about 40 minutes per visit. So I have time to kind of chit chat, especially with the new patients. Those ones usually take me the full hour. I'm going over how everything works and talking about their past medical history, kind of seeing what concerns they have and what we need to start working on. And then follow-up visits can be anywhere from 10 minutes to 60 minutes if it's real complicated. And then I commuted down to Chillicothe, and I had some pediatric visits yesterday. So I had 3 just like well child checks, and I love doing the pediatric stuff. I will say, I think people are surprised at how much peds I see, because in family medicine, it's kind of hard for us to get peds because they
Yes.
go to the pediatrician's office, right? But in DPC, it's all about families. And so I think we're able to kind of like pull in more of those kids because they want the whole family to get this kind of care. And sometimes we'll see it like where the mom will join and kind of feel it out. And then once she decides she really loves it, the whole family becomes patients. And so that's kind of how some of my families started. But I got to do 3 well child checks yesterday, 5 and 6 year olds. So that was fun. And then I was home by like 5 o'clock to take my kids to soccer and then spent the evening at the soccer field.
Do you have anyone in your office like helping you with scheduling all of these appointments, or are you the person who is also scheduling the appointments and seeing patients?
So this is one of the things that when I started, I said, I know this is going to take away from the money that I could be making, but I know that it will drive me insane to have to do it all by myself. So some offices will do it, just doc alone does it all. And I do a lot, but up front, I was like, I want an admin assistant, non-medical, non-clinical, but just someone that can answer the phones, do the scheduling, help with the billing. And so I do have an admin assistant who handles all of that, and she's phenomenal. She does an excellent job, and she's great with patients. She works remote, so she's not on site at all my clinics. She sometimes will be on site when I'm at the Chillicothe office because that's close to her. But typically, she's remote for me. I'm calling her throughout the day, touching base, what do patients need, what kind of things are going on. But she saves me and keeps me on task.
Awesome. So transitioning a little bit to your other role, other than a physician, is you're also assistant clinical professor at Ohio University, Heritage College of Osteopathic Medicine in the OMM department. And actually, that's where we met, in the OMM lab.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your role? How have you decided to keep a teaching role addition to your 4 offices?
Yeah, so I'm going into my second year at OUHCOM, and I love it. It's so much fun. I will admit, like, I didn't anticipate that it would happen this early in my career to have that opportunity. So feel so blessed to be doing what I'm doing this early on. But the opportunity came up and it all worked out, and I'm so excited to be there and working with students. I did a lot of teaching stuff in undergrad, like through grad school. And so I knew I wanted to be involved in the education side of things, not full time, at least not at this point in my career, but I knew that I wanted to teach. Whether that was, residents rotating, med students rotating with me, or like the ultimate, like actually teaching at the med school, which again, like was kind of a long-term dream for me. And so pretty fantastic that I get to do that now. And yeah, it kind of helps to mix things up in the week. So I love that I got my clinical stuff throughout the week, but then I know that I can always look forward to on Wednesdays being in the OMM lab and working with the first and second year students, which is super fun because they're just learning this stuff. And so I love getting to kind of bring that real life clinical piece to the students and like see them as they're learning all of these awesome things that, we kind of forget even this, far out in practice. It's just like, wow, that seems like forever ago.
Awesome. Was this experience, like your teaching experience, influence your practice in any way, or vice versa, your practice influencing your teaching style?
Oh, of course. So, and it's interesting. And I knew coming into the role, like I wanted to be better at OMM. And even though I'm doing OMM in the office, like there are techniques that you guys are learning that I didn't learn as a student. So I'm getting to learn those techniques before you, but alongside you, to some extent. But it's awesome to kind of be learning the most, up to date cutting edge things that they're teaching in the programs. And so I, of course, am taking that into clinic with me and trying new techniques with patients and finding, great responses in my patients. So that's exciting to be able to take what I'm doing in the OMM department and bringing that to my clinical experience. And then I can't help but talk about what I do when I'm in the lab. And students are constantly asking because we don't have a ton of clinical faculty. And so I think the students are always super eager to hear, how does this work in practice? And so I love talking about that with the students, and especially at DPC, because I'm different than most. And so it's always exciting to have those conversations too.
Yeah. So obviously you wear multiple hats, from being a physician, having your clinics, teaching at the school, having your own family and kids. How do you balance all of this? What is your tricks and tips for students who want to have it all? Like, how do you balance it? Is there any specific thing you do on a daily basis?
I am still learning to balance all of these things. And what is out of balance changes from time to time. Like I said, thankfully I have the flexibility in my schedule to really, control when I get those breaks. But sometimes things are just crazy and everything's needed at the same time. And you want to do it all. And sometimes I have to rein myself in. Like I attended the ACOFP Future Leaders Conference here recently, and this is one of the things we talked about. Like those of us that want to do it all, like you can do it all, just not at the same time, like not all at once. So spread it out, over your career, kind of pick those things that you're most passionate about and learning to say no. You wouldn't believe how much at that conference we all talked about, like, no is a complete sentence. Start that now. Like, just say no. And I actually wrote down in my notes from that conference, and this is something I'm trying to implement and do better. One of the physicians there, Dr. Rebecca Lewis, and she is on the board of governors for the ACOFP. She said, if it doesn't fill my cup, it doesn't fill my schedule. And I thought that was super interesting and really spoke to me in the moment. And I'm like, okay, because we can just load our schedule with all kinds of things that maybe aren't super important to us. They might be super important to other people, but it's okay to say no. And so I'm learning that, and that helps me to bring balance. And, I really do prioritize my family. That's my first job, is being a mom and a wife and a sister. And so that comes first. So there are times that like I have to tell patients, like, I can't squeeze you in today. I'll see you tomorrow because I know my kids have an event, or I got to get them to soccer practice, and I get to take my kids to school in the morning. So like I really protect that time so that I can do those things. But still, do the fun extra add-ons that I enjoy. Like today, my husband's out of town on a work trip and my kids are hanging out, maybe watching some TV right now while we're chatting, but we make it work. And we have a lot of fun when we're having fun, and we work hard when we work hard.
Awesome. That's really good advice. Taking notes of all of that. So what do you see the future of direct primary care or primary care in general?
Yeah, I really would love for all of primary care to be using a direct primary care model. And, I think COVID highlighted a lot of deficiencies in healthcare, particularly in the primary care setting. Um, a lot of people that are just like super worn out and have lost that sparkle of, what we started, like why we got into medicine in the first place. And when I went to my first DPC conference, it was the first time, and this was like as a med student, like even as a med student, when things are still exciting, like it gets a little like hard, right? You're like, this isn't quite what I thought it was going to be. At least that's how I felt as a student on clinical rotations. And so when I went to that conference and I was around a bunch of doctors who loved what they did, and they were smiling and not depressed and like excited to be doing medicine, like that's what gave me hope to get through the rest of it, to get through residency and, do all that hard stuff and work all the hard hours, knowing that like I could create my dream practice. And so I really hope that, and DPC is maybe not for everyone. I think some people do just fine in a traditional office setting, but I think at least in the state of healthcare right now, we are not providing the level of care to our patients that they deserve. It is really hard to individualize patient care when all you've got is 10 minutes. Like I can't get a cheeseburger in 10 minutes at a fast food restaurant. Like how do you come up with a complex diagnosis and treatment plan in that amount of time? And oftentimes you just can't. And I think that's what makes it so hard for a lot of primary care physicians to keep going, because they're like, I'm not doing good by my patients. And this is a way to do that. And so even if it's some blended mold of what this is and what that is, I think that, we're really trying to figure that out right now in medicine, what works, what provides quality care, but also like protects physicians and doesn't like beat us to a pulp, and we're getting there. We're making progress. We're seeing growth, but we've still got a long way to go.
So now we're transitioning to the second half of our interview, just talking a little bit about your background and where you grew up and all of that fun stuff. So can you tell us a little bit about where did you grow up and when and how did you become interested in medicine?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Chillicothe, Ohio, which is a little more rural. I did grow up in the country, so I was a country girl, went to a small high school, graduated with a class of 99 students with very little diversity. And in high school, probably about my junior year, and really I don't know that there was any particular reason. I was just like, I want to go into medicine. Like, I had a really close friend whose dad was a DO, and I spent a lot of time with them, and so he was, very inspirational, and I think that was one of the things that kind of sparked my interest early on in medicine. And I also had an excellent family physician that took care of me since I was a baby, all the way up till I left for college. And so I had good experiences with healthcare, and that was probably where it all started. So yeah,
Awesome. Where did you go to undergrad? And what was your
I went.
experience there?
Yeah, I went to Wright State University in Dayton, Ohio, and actually did my undergrad and grad school there at Wright State. For my undergrad, I was an exercise biology major. And then grad school, I got my master's of anatomy there, and had a great time. It was the perfect place for me, not too big of a university, and got the attention that I needed. I actually worked as a pharmacy tech through high school and college. And one of the pharmacists that I worked with was going through med school while he was working as a pharmacist. And the advice that he gave me was to make sure that I went to a college that had a human anatomy lab. And that really worked out, especially considering I ended up getting my master's in anatomy. So yeah, it was great advice from him, and I had a great college experience. Did some studying abroad. My sophomore year, I think it was, I went on a semester at sea voyage, which was a whole summer voyage over the Mediterranean, which I highly recommend. Like, you don't get these opportunities for long travel very often in your life, and college is a great time to do that. And so I'm so glad that I was encouraged to do that, even though I took on some debt to make it happen. And I got to work in the ship clinic as a I forget what they call it when you work as a student. There's some word for that, but anyway, I was the first student to ever get to work in the clinic. I had expressed interest in medical opportunities, and so they put me in the clinic. So I got to work with the ship doc, and there was a PA that worked with him as well. So that was a super cool experience while on a cruise ship, taking care of a bunch of college students, some who made very poor decisions in ports. And so I got to take care of them. My roommate actually threw up all night long one night, and I got to take care of her. So those were some of my first experiences taking care of other people like that. So that was an interesting experience.
That sounds really fun too.
Yeah.
So I know you mentioned earlier in the interview that you attended OUHCOM Dublin campus specifically. How was your experience at HCOM Dublin? Did you do any special extracurricular activities or research? Are there any specific people that really made an impact on you during your time of medical school?
Yeah, so I'll back up just a little bit because I was one of those students who had to like work really hard to get into med school. Not that some don't, but some just like get in the first try, and good for them. That was not me. I had to go to maybe 3 rounds trying to get into med school. And as I was graduating from the anatomy program at Wright State, I heard about the summer scholars program at OU, and praise God, got into the program. They only took like, I don't know, I think they had 23 students the time that I went. And it was an excellent program because my struggle up to that point was I couldn't get an interview. I'm like, if somebody will put me in an interview room, like I can totally do this, but I couldn't get the interview. And actually my college, like person, what do they call those people that are supposed to help you do these things, was like, yeah, I think you should have a plan B. And I'm like, well, I don't. Okay. So Summer Scholars, it was my tryout, and it was an excellent program. So for anybody maybe listening earlier in the process, definitely look into these programs. But Summer Scholars was so much fun. It was super hard, but I got to meet a lot of amazing people, got to meet a lot of the Athens faculty, and I knew I wanted to go to OU for med school. Had some mentors, both DOs, one who went to OU years prior to me getting in. And so that was my top choice. And so that year I was like, you know what? I've done this a few times now. Like I'm in this program. So I only applied to HCOM. And to do Summer Scholars, you kind of have to like have your application in like the minute it opens. So we're like doing our applications while we're there for the program, and then you get the interview. Finally got my interview, and Dr. Schreiner, I got to know him really well during that program. And so, yeah, it was just what I needed to get in. And so I actually was accepted to Athens when I first got accepted. And they do Summer Scholars acceptance a little different because it's kind of pre-cycle. And my husband was like, I don't know how I'm going to get a job in Athens, Ohio, because we were married and he needed to work so that I could pay for, school and we could live. And so this was kind of a really big moment for all of us, getting into med school. But I was accepted into Athens, which was great, but we were like a little like stressed about it. And right before Christmas, Jill Harmon gave me a call and was like, hey, I've got an early Christmas present for you. Because this was the first year that Dublin was even an option. And she's like, we were able to get you into the Dublin campus. And he was able to transfer to the same company in Columbus. So everything worked out absolutely perfectly. Had I got into OU the 2 years prior, like Dublin didn't even exist then. Yeah. So the stars aligned, it all worked out. And my experience at Dublin was phenomenal. We had that whole campus to ourselves because we were the first class there. So it was excellent. Lots of study space. All the Athens students hated us because we had so much study space. They were in those basement rooms and sharing with all the college students on campus.
That's before they transition to Heritage Hall.
Yes, exactly. This was, I'm not that old to say back then, but I guess that was back then. Now they have this beautiful facility down there, but they didn't at the time. And we had a class of 50 students. So we all knew each other really well by the time we finished med school. And so I had a group of like, I don't know, there were 6 or 7 of us girls that really, connected and studied and, went through it all together. And so I couldn't have done it without them. I did have some major struggles, with boards. We maybe will get to this later, but those girls got me through it. And still, like, you make lifelong friends in med school. So like, don't be isolated and be a loner type person, like engage with people because you need that support. Med school's really hard. And I wouldn't have done it without them. So they were phenomenal. And one of my favorite instructors was Dr. Kerger, who is OMM instructor and actually my boss now, which is kind of crazy. Like we're co-workers, he says, but he's actually my boss. So I'm actually returning to the Dublin campus this fall. I was in Athens last year. And so it's crazy. Like this is the 10-year anniversary of our class. And so we're celebrating that here in a few weeks on campus up there. And so it's just kind of crazy, like full circle coming back and going to be teaching on the Dublin campus this year. But lots of great memories, hard stuff. But yeah, it's awesome.
That's awesome. Such a full like circle moment coming back and teaching at Dublin after being the first class to go through.
That is osteopathic medicine. Like we say this all the time, right? That it's like we all know each other and it's such a close-knit community, but it is so true. Like in osteopathic medicine, like we are all just one big happy family, and it comes full circle. And and people are always, welcoming you back with open arms. And that has so been my experience at HCOM.
Awesome. Where did you end up doing your clinical rotations, third and fourth year, and how did you end up deciding on family medicine as your specialty?
So being part of the Dublin campus, we got to do rotations in Columbus. So we didn't have that scary time frame of like ending up who knows where in Ohio, which I was grateful for. Again, because my husband's like, I can't just like up and leave my job, because he had a really great job. That's always a challenge for couples. So I was grateful to be able to stay local. We didn't have to move third and fourth year. And I had some FAR rotations, but FAR was like an hour. Like I went to Zanesville for a few rotations, and those were some of my best rotations, actually. So I did those in Columbus. And then as far as family medicine, I kind of knew from the beginning I wanted to do family medicine. It was more of, was anything going to spark my interest more than family med? And I participated in RUSP, the Rural and Urban Scholars Program. And so that just like solidified it even more, so that like family medicine was what I was meant to do with my life. And that program, phenomenal. Anybody that's familiar and those that aren't, check it out. Had some really great experiences in that program and really just molded me into the family physician that I am today. And I did have some good family medicine rotations as a student, but some really great specialty rotations that just didn't convince me to choose their specialty.
Very interesting. So you made your mind, you want to go into family medicine. How was the application process to residency, and how did you pick that list? Were you focused on only osteopathic recognized programs, or you didn't really care, I just want to be in a residency?
So my year of applying to residency was when we were kind of like mid-divide. So we actually had, you could apply DO or you could apply to the programs that were in both. So there were some osteopathic programs that only put themselves in the DO bucket. And then there were a lot of programs that shifted and went to, I guess, was it ACGME? I don't even remember what they called this whole separation at that time, but there were two. You had to decide if you were going to apply in both, because one happened before the other. So that was probably like the most stressful piece. Well, no, that's not true. It wasn't the most stressful piece. Boards were the most stressful piece. I had two kids while in med school. My son was between first and second year, and then I had my daughter between second and third year. And the first one was way easier than the second one. And so I took boards shortly after having a baby. Don't recommend it. Pregnancy brain is not as bad as postpartum brain. And I did not pass the first time. So I had to do a second attempt, which was super, super stressful. And then I didn't pass the second time. So then I had to go a third time, and I'm like questioning my whole life at this point. I'm like, I've gotten this far and this is where it all is. Thankfully, like I said, had an incredible support group of friends, and they studied extra they were done with their boards. They were doing great, but were there for me, and we got through it and I passed. But the timing of all of this was super tricky with applying for residency, because I wasn't going to have my score back before the first match took place. And you had to make your decisions and put all the stuff in and whatever. And my number one choice, I had to kind of straight up ask him, like, are you willing to rank me without my score? Which is super risky for them to do, right? Because they had decided to only be in the DO match and they weren't going into the other. And that's where I really wanted to go. And they were not willing to like rank me. And I was grateful that they were, upfront about that, because then I had to figure out like, what the heck am I going to do? And I can say this now, then this would have been really hard to say, but I did not want to go back to my hometown for training. But I had interviewed with the program in Chillicothe, and they were willing to rank me without my score. And I didn't know what they were going to rank me, right?
And
but they're like,
are you talking about level 1 specifically, or was it level 2?
2.
Level 2? Okay.
Yeah, so I didn't have my score, and they had to like make a decision without that score. And they were willing to, which I was like, this is crazy, but okay, like we'll go for it. So then I decided to go into the DO match. And since they were the only program that was willing to rank, and there were only a couple of programs that I was interested in that were doing that match. And so I ranked them and I matched in the first round, which I mean was great, but I was a little like sad at the time because I'm like, this isn't really what I wanted, but like this is kind of the only choice I had. And you know, I will say like my faith is a huge part of what has gotten me to this point, and it was all meant to be. I can't imagine now having done my training anywhere else. It was a huge blessing to be able to take care of people in my hometown, and that program was exactly what I needed. And this is something that I talk with students about a lot because we stress about ranking, like, oh, what if I don't get my number one? And like, how do I know how to rank these programs? They all follow the same rules, right? They all have to meet the same standards. They all have to teach you the same things. So ultimately, like all of these programs are capable of that. The important thing is going somewhere or trying to go somewhere where you feel like you can work with these people, like they're good humans. It's not going to be a nightmare. Like you're not going to feel isolated. And thankfully, when I interviewed, like I did feel that way. So it wasn't so much the program, it was kind of like my hometown vibes of that hospital system and just old history, I think, more than the program itself. So it was an excellent program. I'm so glad I got to do my training there. There was a lot of flexibility with our schedules despite being residents. So I actually still got to spend time with my kids and my family through residency. And I think that's important to prioritize, especially if you're married or you have kids, or even if you don't, like having time to go to the gym and take trips when you want to. So that's something that I think sometimes we just don't think you can have when you're looking at residency programs. And you can. There are programs that like prioritize that stuff and help you be well through your training. And so I encourage students to, you know, always ask those questions like, what do you do in your time off? I actually had someone when I was doing an audition rotation tell me that like, well, I don't, like sometimes my husband gets to walk me to work is what she said to me. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, do you guys like go out to dinner or do you like take trips? And she's like, well, he walks me to work sometimes. Like I see him in the mornings. And I was like, yeah, this is not the program I want to be in.
Wow.
So that was a
I'm
long-winded answer.
Oh, I'm really glad that actually ended up working out the way it's supposed to. And it seems like you even had a great residency time. Do you want to talk a little bit about your residency experience in general, like going more into details?
Yeah, sure. So, and I think you mentioned earlier, and I just didn't address it, whether osteopathic recognition, you know, was at that point, it didn't matter. I just needed to get into a program, right? And my program was not recognized at the time, but they did have a lot of DOs in the program, which was great, and DOs that were passionate about doing OMM. So we actually had some OU faculty that were coming and teaching some of the didactics focused on OMM. Although that kind of fell off my second year, like we had a hard time. I mean, COVID or something happened and things got weird. But it was hard to get, you know, guest speakers. So the students actually kind of took those over. So those of us that were DOs kind of started running those sessions. And we did in our clinic do a lot of OMM, which was great. So even though we weren't osteopathic recognized at the time, and I don't know if they are now. I know they were trying to get more DO faculty and meet all those criteria or whatever. But at the time we weren't, and we were still seeing a lot of patients in clinic from a lot of our specialists because we were pretty good about on rotations trying to incorporate those things, and the specialists loved that. So they would refer patients to the residency clinic, and we got to do a lot of OMN that way. So even though it wasn't, you know, all the stars aligned that way, we were able to do a lot of those things, and I got a lot of experience doing it in clinic, which was fun. And then it was just a well-balanced program too. I know some people are looking for more inpatient in their family medicine experience versus outpatient. I really was focusing on outpatient medicine. Of course, we had our inpatient rotations. We got to do stuff at the VA. So I felt like I had good rotations through the program. And then one of the things I will toot the horn for my program was their focus on business and medicine. My director was very passionate about that. And so they really developed our didactic curriculum. We had a whole series that focused on business and medicine, where we talked about billing and coding and how to make sure you're hitting, all the targets and how those things even came about, like the history of all that nonsense. And then different models of care. And so I got to talk about DPC because, well, I was really interested in that. So it was cool to get to kind of talk about different models of medicine throughout that series. And I hope that a lot of programs are really doing more of that, especially these days, so that residents really know what options they have, and students as well, because we've got med students sitting in a lot of those didactics too.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. So our grand finale question that we like to ask every guest we have: what was the best piece of advice you got throughout your education? Can be from growing up, college, medical school, or even residency, that you always think of and would like to pass on to other students?
So there is a very specific moment, and I can't remember the exact words of the conversation, but when I think I was in my early years of undergrad, well, I had to have been because it was after my semester at sea experience. I was at Max and Irma's in Chillicothe, Ohio, and I was having lunch or dinner with my mentor, Dr. Madsen, and his wife. And then at the time would have been my boyfriend. I don't think we were married yet, my now husband. And we were talking about my future career in medicine. And after I did that semester at sea trip, I worked with a PA, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to go to PA school instead. And so that's kind of where the conversation started. And he was like, well, what's your dream job? Like, think about ultimate, if it could be perfect, what you do with your life, like, what's that look like? And he didn't tell me to like say it out loud, but just like picture what that dream job looks like. And I was like, okay. And he's like, are you the boss or is someone else the boss? And I was like, I don't know. I guess I didn't think about that. I was like, but I guess I would need to be the boss. And he's like, so do you still want to go to PA school? And I was like, okay, I get your point. And he was like, they don't get to choose their vacation first. So it was kind of a silly way to like go into that. But the takeaway from that, he talked about, picture that dream job and create that opportunity for yourself. And I think sometimes in medicine, we think there's only one way or one path that we can take in whatever specialty, or like it always kind of looks like this. And I think him giving me that advice that day over the years really churned into where I'm at doing DPC, because this was my dream job. And now I'm doing that dream job, which is crazy. And people think I'm nuts to be doing academics and running my own practice. And I was doing jail medicine in addition to that for a little while. But you can imagine your dream job and you can create that. Somewhere out there, there's somebody doing something similar. And don't let one bad rotation or experience like take that away from you or ruin that, opportunity. Because if we can get through med school, we can get through residency, like we can run a business, we can create a niche practice, like you can do any of that. If you can take these boards and get through med school, if you can survive all that, you can do anything. So I just always encourage students that like, don't think there's only one way to do it. If you want to do OMM in the jail, figure it out. They need manipulation too. And I've had this conversation with students at OU. I'm like, there's a way to do it. Like, figure out what that is, because they need taken care of just like anybody else. Now, you want to be safe, but there are ways to make it happen. So that would be my advice, is just like picture that dream job and set yourself up for those opportunities to get you there. Make it a reality.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today and just to give all of that information to our listeners about direct primary care and your journey and all of that information. It was really inspiring. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Really enjoyed it.
This concludes our episode of Do or Do Not. Send all inquiries, comments, suggestions, and even let us know if there's someone you want us to interview to doordonotpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to like us on Facebook at Do or Do Not Podcast for updates. If you enjoyed our podcast, please share it with your classmates and administration. We have plenty of more interviews lined up, and we're excited to share them with you. This is Tian Yu Shea. Thank you guys so much for listening to Do or Do Not.